This is a city that represents excellence. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. If you can make it with the ICF, just as in New York, you can make it anywhere. How are you?
Hey, nice to meet you, man.
Everything
It's good, thank you.
Good to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. It's made me happy. I'm Dr. DrDIvanYoung. I'm an ICF Master Certified Coach and a National Board Certified Health and Wellness. Just one fantastic coaching conversation with a bunch of very brilliant, well-respected, highly esteemed colleagues of mine.
I'm Dr. Tavis. I am the Department Chair for Human Capital Management Programs that includes Master's Science in Executive Coaching and Organizational Consulting at New York University.
Hi, I'm Antoy Grant, the President of ICF NYC Charter Chapter.
My name is Gina Martin. I'm an executive coach and organizational consultant, and I am also the president-elect for the New York City chapter of the ICF.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Cassidy, founder of Aquiline Coaching for news and entertainment professionals.
David Perozzi, a senior producer at CNN Studios.
Hi, I'm Saliem Aregaye. I'm part of DrDIvanYoung's team.
When you thought about this coaching program at NYU, the void that was missing was what?
You know, coaching for quite some time wasn't considered to be a serious profession. Therapy, psychology, and indeed it was kind of an amalgamation of various disciplines. But we're living in a very different time right now where these types of practice-based skills are becoming more and more valuable than even the purely academically based skills. Where the rubber meets the road right now is how do you actually apply those skills in a real life situation? What are the outcomes? And so I think that that's what was driving our program, that is a Master in Science. Yes, our students are studying science, but at the same time, the whole point is to make them accomplished evidence-based professionals who apply the science to the actual real-life situation and help people succeed.
When I was developing this credentialing prep course, the void that I kept seeing was that these people, they're getting this credential. If you went to a great medical school and you can't pass your boards, how are you going to really be successful in practice? Here's all the technical stuff in the science. But if you lose it, you're creating a great transactional situation, but not a transformational situation. What we really need to think about is, and I think coaching is at an intersection very similar, where there's this thing between making sure we're evidence and research based, and now here's all these niches. Transformation for the client. What do you think about that, Antoy?
I agree. For myself, becoming a coach, I'm still at the early phases. I'm an ACC. So figuring out your niche has been ridiculous for me. Because I have a variety of clients, life, business, entrepreneurs, and they fit into a lot of different categories. So I like that holistic approach that you mentioned, where you're taking care of the whole person. I still can't say what my niche is. I have IVF clients, I have people in entertainment, I have entrepreneurs, I have doctors, I have a variety. Would I love to niche down? Yes, I would. But as of now, clients are coming to me and I treat them as a whole.
This isn't your first country, right? You're from
Venezuela.
And being from Venezuela, you're looking at things from a cultural perspective, as well as the perspective of a woman who's checking all these different boxes. How does it look to you when you have to incorporate all that in what you're doing and think about an organization?
Yeah, and I think when you think about culture, I think it's just being even more conscious about the different people that you are working with, their backgrounds, I think really understanding what's behind what's being said, which I think when you talked about transactional versus transformational, I think the real transformation happens for clients when you can go a little bit deeper, right? When you can actually get behind their challenges, whether it is a cultural, fit, whether it is maybe organizationally, they don't feel aligned, they don't feel included, right? So I think really understanding your diverse companies, but also your diverse clients, and how that might play a role in the transformation they need from coaching.
That brings me back to you, Doc. When you are always 2 steps ahead in this game, how do we as practitioners pivot ourselves where we can successfully increase capacity while maintaining competence and efficacy in practice?
There is a saying in medicine, working at the top of your license, that I very much like to repeat in every context when this conversation comes up. The easiest answer to your question is technology can take care of it. Now with agentic AI, there are vendors, and they're going to be presented at our NYU Coaching and Technology Summit in the summer, who actually support coaches in that respect. They're kind of the Microsoft Office for coaching, specifically for coaching, designed to free up the coaches so that they can engage in that top license experience with their clients and pay attention rather than sit there and take notes. Remember the old-fashioned way? You have to be taking notes. No, you don't have to take notes anymore because the AI system will do it organically. You don't even need to look at any devices, etc. So that's kind of the easy answer to your question. The next generation of AI coaches will be stepping in between your human-to-human coaching sessions.
Wow.
Where they're 24/7, where the client can go back to an AI coach that will be trained on their material, etc. And the next generation coach needs to be comfortable working with those tools, organically augmenting them into their process. And supporting their clients, and also organizing their coaching lives in such a way that they interact both with very smart AI tools as well as with the human coaching.
We really embrace the fact that we can have something like AI serve us without us becoming either dependent on it or it taking over and doing its own thing with one of our clients.
Yeah, a couple of answers for that. First of all, what Martin showed you is pretty much standard. I'm developing my own. Everyone can develop their own avatar on these technologies. What it does is just that you train a language model on your body of work. If you published a lot, and not even published all of your Zoom sessions, everything that's recorded. And so people like Martin, like Marshall Goldsmith, George Burson, and all of the celebrities kind of in the HR and coaching space, they're all having their avatars. These technologies are very, at consumer level, sort of available to all of us. So that's one thing. How, to your point, how do we get to the top of the license if we don't have the apprenticeship at the basic level? I think that's a big question. You know, if somebody is trained exclusively, all of the kind of grunt work is taken care of, how do you become an expert? Because before it was a step-by-step ladder that we had to climb to get there. I mean, that's a big question, because this is where we in our educational capacity are learning this cutting-edge research on the interaction of human and technology, because there are more questions than answers to that, because these technologies are arriving way ahead of everything that we've experienced. And the challenge with traditional research is that it's backward-looking. Any traditional research will send you back to look at the data, run the surveys, which means that people will answer your questions, et cetera, et cetera. What we need for the future is more scenario planning And that's where we are, using, and we will see it at our conference again at NYU, digital twins, developing technologies that simulate potential situations. I'll give you an example. I was just looking at a company, a startup that trains physicians on communicating a diagnosis. And there was an example of a cancer diagnosis that needed to be presented to a patient. And so before, we just trained medical personnel on what they need to know clinically. There's no coaching training, which I hope to change in the medical training process. And so that particular situation was such that this physician could train with avatars of different personality types. There were like 5-6 different reactions and so what the AI would do is provide that particular physician with feedback on how they communicated to different personality types of potential patients. And then saying, you should say it that way, or help them practice the presentation of a diagnosis so that when they actually go to their client to make that announcement, which changes people's lives, they're prepared, they're trained, not only on what to say, but how to say. And before, how many doctors really work with a coach before they go and do that? None.
One of the reasons I became credentialed as a master MBTI practitioner was I saw that void existed in adherence and compliance when I would work on the clinical side of coaching or the medical side as part of that interdisciplinary approach to wellness and well-being, is that we don't take enough into consideration about cultural origin. And I think that's a valid point. Let me ask you, Dave, you create these really wonderful docu-stories and documentaries. When you hear this conversation, what's red flags to you, or what are the yellow flags that pop up?
Well, I think about how it applies to journalism and broadcasting. And much like your industry, there's a lot of new approaches to writing and to storytelling, and AI has really been a big disruptor. And I think that it's not coming, it's very much here. So the change for you is also the change in journalism and in television. And it's a matter of embracing what is here, because it's not going to go away, and trying to be relevant and trying to sort of make that pivot so that you are able to function in your job. Because I think in terms of journalism and jobs, there'll be fewer, they'll be more consolidated. I think presenters are going to, the day will come when they are virtual. But I do think even with AI and with what you do, a commonality is there's nothing stronger than the connection. So it seems what you all do is even if you are AI generated, but in your business you do have a connection, and that is irreplaceable. AI isn't going to change that contact, even though AI might be able to address an issue that needs coaching or a story that needs to be told. It can't have that intrinsic human to human thing, but it's not the same as a human sort of bringing that story forward.
What I'm hearing is the word relatedness and authenticity. And I think that what we have to really embrace is the opportunity that this potential brings rather than run from. I think that human element of compassion and that human element of making people feel seen, making them feel heard, tapping into what they don't see within themselves is something AI might recognize, but it's something that a coach can catalyze.
My response to that is that's all very true. However, in the absence of access to compassion, empathy, etc., AI is a really good replacement.
Wow.
There's a whole new generation of AI tools that what you might want to call fake compassion and fake empathy. but in such an authentic way
Wow.
that the humans, and there's a lot of research on that, the humans actually relate to it. Like the humans get attached to robots as much as they get attached to pets.
Yeah.
So it's not replacing human compassion and empathy, but it's supplying that in the absence of human compassion and empathy. And I'll give you an example with which I often cite. The ratio in some of the public schools in New York City of a college counselor per student is 1 to 500.
Wow.
So yes, there is a live counselor, human, but how much compassion and empathy, and I'm not talking about executive coach.
Yeah.
I'm talking about basic college counseling. Imagine if you train a really highly, compassionate and intelligent AI that fakes human reaction and give it to all 500 students. They might have an interaction with a live human coach, but in between everything in there. So in the absence, and if you look around, if you scan the horizon of humanity and think of all of those situations where there's no human compassion. This morning I was talking to the head of a humanitarian coaching network that works primarily with refugees, asylum seekers, and other types of people. Imagine living in these refugee camps. And yes, you could volunteer, and I'm actually building that capacity. We're going to have NYU coaches also participate. However, the need is so extreme in those types of situations. And what does it take to have some level of support on that coach? And in those, the scenarios that I propose, they're not replacing, but as close as they could, create that potential connection and relationship to some support network that could be personalized and have a name that really helps people a lot.
What I'm hearing you say is students have fatigue and they have the problems of normal everyday life. So even if you are the best at empathy, you just might not be having a good day. The last part of what you said is it would highlight awareness that their coach might not even know that they need.
I liked what Dave said about it's here. A lot of people say it's coming, it's here. And to add on to Dr. Tavis and what Gina was talking about the cultural. So with the availability and the affordability factor, and even the cultural factor weighing in, how many people everywhere can actually afford a coach? We're talking globally. So Gina and I had the opportunity last year to have a lot of the AI companies come in to the chapter and show us their technology. We got to experience the technology. And one thing we talked about was, okay, if you have to hire a coach, you might be paying thousands of dollars. They've created these variety of apps, whether it's chatbots or the AI assisted coach, where you can do it for $9.99 a month. So as far as the availability, that makes coaching, it's not a real human coach, but for people who have never experienced coaching or may not have the availability or the affordability to have a coach, it's an option. And one of the details that they also shared with us was that sometimes people feel more comfortable and less judged with the AI because they know with that human element, there's always that, well, I'm afraid to maybe tell them or share this portion, but it's an AI, it's not really, that factors may not be in there with the AI. So there are things with the AI coaches or the chatbots that people feel more comfortable with as far as the availability. $9.99 or $7.99 a month to go on, and even if I know it's fake, get some feedback on some questions and answers that I might have or need. People might find that welcome. And then just on the cultural side, as far as what Gina was talking about, a lot of times people who can afford coaches are within the demographics of not being able to, the affordability factor in other countries and things like that, in certain social groups, designated groups. It's not something that it's an extra revenue that can be spent on. So these new technologies that are coming out and the cost effectiveness of them, even though they're not human per se, and people know that, but if you can't get, like Dr. Anna said, you can't hire Dr. Anna or Stephanie or Gina or myself, or definitely not Dr. D.
What do you mean definitely not Dr. D? I'm budget friendly. Sometimes I'm being funny.
I'm just kidding.
But you get what you pay for.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Exactly. But if you can't afford that, these new technologies make it available.
Yeah. People want to feel seen. They want to feel heard, and something that accomplishes that. So, in summing this up, what I'm hearing is we need to educate ourselves about this technology, run toward it rather than from it, because it is definitely coming.
We are trying to introduce coaching to journalists so that they know now that, they don't have to, just suck it up, buttercup, like we do so often in the newsrooms. In newsrooms, that's what we do. There's another story and you're just about to walk out the door to go to put your kid to bed or go to a dance recital, and then there's an assassination attempt on some world leader, and now you've got to stay.
You got to jump to this story.
You got a job to do,
Yeah.
and you're stuck. And it's this never-ending gerbil wheel. So burnout is real for them. And how have they coped traditionally? Smoking, vaping, bad diet and exercise. All of this. So when I called Society for Professional Journalists, and I said, I have an idea. I think this is going to work, because I'm a former network executive, and I used it with my team. I had a team of 20 at the network that worked for me, and I used it. Sometimes I talked to journalists who were saying, they're concerned about AI, and they're ambivalent to use it, and there's all kinds of concerns for them. And to everyone's point here, it's here. And I remind them that, look, this is our generation's printing press. It's our fax machine. It's our Google. It's our, this is our technology now that we have to, work together with and to advance the profession.
Where people from all professions come to me and say, my profession needs coaching. I want to introduce it across all of NYU schools. Because of the stress, because of the burnout, because of the rate of change, these coaching skills become an adjacent skill set for any profession. And that's where I see the growth, the opportunity to grow for coaching rather than grow horizontally. Because all I hear a lot of times from coaches, I want to be a transformational coach, I want to change people's lives. Sometimes you need a fix. Sometimes you need a quick coaching, micro-dosing coaching for when you walk into that patient's room and talk to them. So I think that coaches need to change how they think. You're not going to get a 6-month retainer with an executive and you're going to transform that executive. There will be a few, but the majority, I think we're moving into building coaching into the flow of work and making it a go-to skill sets pretty much for every profession. And that's where I also see people coming from all different walks of life, into parents. Children need coaching. I mean, you name it, a coaching skill is an adjacent skill set to whatever you're doing professionally. And also, don't beat yourself up if you're not having the deep, existential type of conversation at every session. Sometimes you need to get a person just a quick tip, a reminder, and just listen to what they have to say and help them get through that particular moment. So I think that the coaches to the skill set have to be T-shaped, both ability to operate horizontally as well as deeply when it's needed, and have the intelligence to judge when to pull out which skill set when you're interacting with it. And that is And that is a moment that an AI at this point, that judgment moment of truth, is still, I think, reserved to a human. But there are lots of opportunities to create kind of a team with AI, with chatbots, as well as other coaches. So that's one thing.
You're able to provide coaching for an industry that you know very well, or for leaders. I think going back to what you were saying, if you haven't walked the talk, how are you going to coach people, right? You said that, Dr. Avan. And so I think it's an opportunity for people that are reinventing their careers and realizing, how do I use my past experience maybe shape how I can impact, industries like journalism, like retail, like, perhaps the medical field, and how do you do that in a way where I've walked, the walk, I know what it feels to be in their shoes, and now I can provide that.
Saliem started out being my client.
Yes.
And it's been 5 years. When you called me, what made you call, and what has happened since we worked together, how coaching has impacted your life?
Yeah.
And be blunt.
Okay. Oh, I will.
Yeah.
I've been quiet,
and
but
then
I will.
after that, we're going to wrap this up with Dave having a final word.
Okay. I won't take too long, but being very vulnerable and open about how I reached out to Dr. Young. I was in a relationship. It wasn't going well. We had a child, and I felt like I wanted to leave, but I was just struggling on like how to make that happen. And I came from a single mother. I didn't want to be a single mother, just a lot of stuff like that. So I was like, you know what? If I find him a coach, maybe it's going to help him, So I go around and I looked up, and this is where the cultural part comes in, right? Because I looked up, I want an African-American coach, a male who can maybe speak to him and be able to encourage him to change some things that were going on. So I looked it up. I saw Dr. Young's face. Hey, top life coach. I said, that's the one I need right there. So I call, and randomly, Dr. Young actually answered the phone. And I was expecting, I actually had left a message, but I was so persistent that particular day. I was on my lunch break. I said, I'm going to call the other phone number because I haven't gotten a call back, and I need an answer today, God. I need an answer today. So I called the second number. Dr. Young answered the phone. And I'm like, oh, Dr. Young? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, this is the situation. I explained, and in the end, he was like, okay. So he asked me very specific questions. He says, look, he was like, he doesn't need a life coach. You need a life coach. And that wasn't the answer I was expecting that particular day, because I'm like, what? I'm like, why? I've had a therapist stuff. He's like, okay, well, look. What is it that you want to do? And then I thought about it, how am I going to explain to my partner to get on this call and actually sign up with this life coach? Say, you have to want the change in order to, whatever services you get, if you're not wanting to do it, it's not going to work. So for me, I said, you know what? I do want this change. I don't know what's going to come from it, but I'm going to go ahead and sign up. And it really did change my life. Cover your ears. I don't want you thinking I'm over here trying to sell you anything, but, it really did change my life in that day after I spoke to him, because he was so blunt and real. And it hurt my feelings a little bit, but I was just I'm just being honest. It hurt my feelings. I thought I was doing so many great things, but in the end, it was really hurting my son by us being together because it wasn't a good environment. Part of my nature is just always helping others or advocating for others. And I just realized I need to do that for myself and my son with, talking to Dr. Young. And so, I made that decision that day. I said, you need to go to rehab, and I'm not going to be able to be with you no more. And so after that, I continued working on myself. And, Dr. Young has encouraged me, hey, keep going to school, keep working on other opportunities. And I've represented a lot of workers, and, a lot of the things that you guys have said today is I agree with so much of it. This is a very important conversation. I've represented social workers. I've represented healthcare professionals, MPs, RNs, education workers, and there's no industry that I can think of right now that does not need a coach.
How has it affected your life from where you started to where you are now?
Coaching?
Yeah. Well, me specifically coaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's changed my life completely in the fact that I left my ex. I ended up getting I'm still in the same career, but I ended up getting a different opportunity, which was significant in the way that they even treated me, the opportunities that I had. And in talking to Dr. Young, I was able to keep it cool and not just want to leave my last position, just randomly because I was upset. And I stuck through it, and I continue to build those relationships. And I feel really happy about where I'm at right now. And I have some internal peace. That's the most important part, And I see a lot of colleagues, they have heart attacks and strokes and all kind of stuff because it's a very high demanding time kind of job. And I feel good because I don't feel that way. I feel like, and when I have those times where I need somebody, I'll call Dr. Young and say, hey, I have a situation and I need a sounding board. I need some kind of, tell me, what do you think? Or help me to see things in a different way. So I'm not seeing it just from one perspective. So coaching definitely changes your life.
Thank you. Dave, take us out.
Well, it's so nice to meet all of you, and thank you so much for including me in your afternoon. And I love hearing your stories and what you all do for work and what you do with your life.
What would be the journalism spin of everything you sum up today from Dr. Tavis, Gina, Antoy?
Well, I mean, what I'm hearing, I'm now borrowing that phrase from you, but what I'm hearing is that, there are tremendous benefits by having a life coach, either individually in your life or if an organization chooses to have a life coach for their employees. There's really no downside. So I think it's the message that I'm hearing is that the benefits of it are sort of immeasurable in a lot of ways, and that AI is here, and your industry, like all industries, is learning how to sort of use it and benefit by it as it replaces a lot of people in many ways.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to say is thank you guys. This is a great coaching conversation. Some very brilliant people at this table. I'm Dr. DrDIvanYoung. I'm an ICF Master Certified Coach, a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach, and a bunch of other stuff. But at the end of the day, I do this because I believe that all of us are here for a reason. When we tap into our capacity and our competency, we don't just have a transactional life, we have a transformational one. And for all you aspiring coaches that are watching this video, wherever you are in the world, just know that if this is something that is calling you, it's probably a good reason for it. Have the courage to be you. Have a great day.